Yeah.
Sorry.
Minister, we're getting a new public holiday on the 27th of April. What modelling did you do prior to the announcement of this about the impact of that public holiday on court delays?
I don't think that that act is my act. You might want to talk to Minister Graham about that.
Kotsis.
Minister, I'm not asking you about the public holiday. I'm asking you about the impact of the public holiday on court delays and what modelling you've done about the impact of your government's decision a couple of weeks ago to declare the 27th of April a public holiday, impact on court delays.
The government hasn't done any modelling in relation to that, but the heads of jurisdiction will quite deftly weave that into the timetable and make allowances for it.
What sort of work is going to be required to relist these matters?
The court staff will quite readily do that. For example, when the Downing Centre flooded in late last year, that was a huge impost on court timetables.
And they did it very well, and they relocated to different facilities. Mr Attorney General, I'm asking you...
The head of courts and tribunal services and the heads of jurisdiction did a terrific job in working around that, and they'll do the same thing for a one-day public holiday.
So what thought did you give to that, and what input did you provide into that decision about the impact of a suddenly announced public holiday on matters which are already listed for hearing?
None, because I don't think it to have been of a massive consequence for the courts. The government
so
made
you don't
a decision.
think that if we lose a day of court's time, it's a massive consequence? How many jury trials were listed for that day, Minister?
So, Ms Higginson, I've worked, for example, with the head of...
Ms Carter, by the way.
Ms Carter, I've worked with the Chief Magistrate of the local court to rejig court timetables and things like that to make the local court more efficient. This won't be a huge impost on them.
So how many jury trials will need to be relisted?
I'll take that on notice.
Thank you. If you could take on notice how many matters had already been laid down for hearing in the local court and in the district court, and how many of those were jury trials, I'd be very grateful.
Sure. Are you suggesting we shouldn't have had the public holiday?
I'm suggesting that as the Attorney General, you should have provided input to the government about the impact on court time. That's what I'm suggesting, Attorney General.
I'm sure that those skillful individuals will be able to accommodate that single day without too much trouble.
What about the litigants?
Yeah. So I understand, Attorney General, that under your government's policy to reduce reliance on consultants, that legislation and policy development is to be delivered in-house. Does this preclude seeking the advice of senior counsel about constitutional issues which may arise in respect of legislation?
Not if I deem it necessary.
Not if you deem it necessary. Okay. So you have the option to seek senior legal counsel's advice about constitutionality of legislation that you're putting up?
Yes.
Okay, and how often have you done that in the past year?
I don't know. I'd have to take that on notice.
So it's an important decision you're making to seek senior counsel's advice about constitutionality of legislation, and you don't recall?
I don't keep a running tally of the times I brief, that the government briefs independent counsels, but I'll take that on notice. So
it must be a fairly common occurrence then?
I'll take it on notice.
Okay. Were you surprised by the decision of the court in Lees in the state of New South Wales?
No.
You weren't surprised by it? Did that decision differ from advice that you may have received in respect of the Crimes Amendment Places of Worship Bill?
I don't discuss advice that I get.
Well, Minister, what you've just told us is that you weren't surprised by the decision in Lees, which found that the legislation was unconstitutional. So does that mean that you deliberately presented legislation to Parliament which you understood had a significant risk of being unconstitutional? No,
I think as has been said by a great many ministers, indeed the Premier and other ministers at state and federal level, when you're presented with emergencies of this type and you have to craft a legislative response, that's novel, and that some people think might wander into infringing on people's freedoms and rights, that sometimes there is an inherent risk. that that legislation might be ruled to be unconstitutional or the like, and all you can do is craft it in the safest way possible, taking into consideration the advice that you give. But I think the Premier's made it clear in more than one.
But Attorney General,
No,
isn't part of
just let-
crafting...
I'm nearly finished. The Premier's made it clear that on more than one occasion, as has Michelle Rowland and others, that when you, for want of a better phrase, push the envelope with legislation like this, it does run a risk that it might be fall foul of constitutional provisions, but you've got to do your best to try and stay within the bounds of the law and press on because you think the legislation is important.
So to summarise, if the Premier says it's okay, we do that and we ignore any advice we may have received about unconstitutionality?
That's not what I said.
With respect, I think that's exactly what you said. Did you seek any advice in relation to the Terrorism and Other Legislation Amendment Bill?
I'm not going to waive privilege over any advice. Of course the government receives advice when they are crafting legislation of that type.
Did you receive external advice?
I'd have to take that on notice.
You have to take that on notice. With respect to the consultants policy, does that limit the use of other external advisors, for example, media advisors?
So which policy are you talking about?
I'm talking about your government's signature policy, which was announced in the press release, public service core work policy to reduce reliance on consultants and harness government expertise.
Is that the pre-election one?
It was a pre-election policy which was actually introduced and announced. The date of this announcement was the 18th of September 2025. I'm sorry you're not familiar with your own government's policies.
No, you're just you haven't spelt out which particular policy we're talking about. So now that you have, so it's not my that's not my portfolio responsibility.
With respect, Minister, I think we were all led to believe that it applied to every portfolio.
Yeah.
But perhaps we can just simply ask the question, do you employ the services of external media advisors?
External media
External.
in my office?
Yes.
No.
Do you employ the services of external public affairs firms in your office?
In my office?
Yes.
No. No.
Do you employ the services of an external speechwriter?
No.
Do any of the agencies under your control employ the services of external media advisors?
I don't know. I'll take that on notice.
Thank you. Or public affairs firms?
I don't know. I just know. Sorry?
Or public affairs firms?
What's the first part of the question?
Do any of the agencies
Latham
under your
is interrupting
control
me here.
employ the services of public
Any
affairs
of my
firms?
agencies? I'll have to take that on notice.
Okay, and perhaps you could also
Unless
take
you want Mr.
speechwriters.
Titball to answer the questions now.
I'm happy to get those answers after lunch. That'd be good, thank you. Attorney, the New South Wales Law Reform Commission report into serious road crime was sent to you over a year ago and tabled by you in May last year. When can we expect a response to that report?
We're still considering that report. It's an important report. I know that the damage and destruction that's been brought to the families that form that group is serious. But we're carefully considering the recommendations of that report. It was a good report. I want to thank the Commission for it. It considered the views of the community and the need for reform to be evidence-based and on established principles to fit within the broader criminal framework.
Any time frame on that?
No, I don't have a time
Okay.
frame. No.
The New South Wales Sentencing Council's report on firearms, knives and other weapons that you received the year before last. Last estimates, you told us you were still thinking about it. Any response to that report yet?
I'll take that on notice. I'm not sure that we're bound to respond to
No.
a Sentencing
I'm just,
Council report.
you receive all this advice. I'm just interested in the process of consideration. You'd be aware that at 4.1 of that report, the Sentencing Council recommended the introduction of tiered offences for possession or use of a prohibited weapon, including a firearm. Was that advice considered in the drafting of the Terrorism and Other Legislation Amendment Bill?
Not by me, but there were a number of people who had input into that legislation, so I can't answer for all of them. Some of them were from other departments as well, so I'll take that on notice if you
Okay,
want me to.
thank
But
you.
the answer, not by me.
Did you share that report with the other departments and other people involved in the drafting of that bill?
I didn't specifically draw that to their attention with respect to that bill. No,
All right, thank you.
but they would have been aware of it.
According to the Sydney Morning Herald, in the first 6 months of your government Attorney-General, inquiries and investigations called by you and your ministerial colleagues were averaging more than one a week. I'm just curious why we spend money and time on important inquiries if we're not considering the outcomes in policy development.
Well, I'm not sure that that's correct. There've been...
Well, the substantive question remains, why are we spending time and money on important inquiries if they appear not to be feeding into policy development? We have a Sentencing Council report on firearms which appears not to have been fed into really significant legislation in relation to firearms. We've got, as you said, a really significant report into vehicular manslaughter, which appears still to be the subject of consideration. I understand the importance of thought, but also the fruits of this work, Attorney.
So the fruits of, regardless of what the government's response might be, formal response, they are all read by me, by my staff, by DCJ. So the fruits of those reports are never wasted. Whether they are taken up by the government or not is another matter. And for example, in relation to the report of the Sentencing Council on knives, we were actually ahead of that report with some of our legislation in relation to doubling of knife crime, giving police warning powers and things like that.
So it wasn't a fruit of the
We
report.
were ahead of that. But Peter McClellan and the Sentencing Council are an absolute A-grade group of people, and those reports always form the body of knowledge of government.
Attorney, are you familiar with the coroner's recommendations following the death of Mr. Jerwin Roper?
You'd have to refresh me on them.
He was the fellow who was working on an agricultural property in southern New South Wales and apparently jumped to his death from a moving car, and there were significant recommendations made in relation to the circumstances in which he had been held and modern slavery. Are you familiar with any of the recommendations from that report?
No, I'm not. I have to be honest, no.
Who then advises you in relation to recommendations flowing from coronial inquests?
The DCJ.
And have you received any advice in relation to that coronial inquest which was handed down earlier this year?
I'd have to take that on notice.
Okay, so then I'm presuming you haven't discussed those recommendations with the New South Wales Anti-Slavery Commissioner.
I may have, and it might just be that I need refreshing on that.
Minister, that coroner's inquest recommended that there be sufficient funding to allow our modern slavery hotline to operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and be effectively advertised so that persons in the position of Mr. Royopa feel that they have choices other than jumping from a moving car to their death. Is this something that you are looking at to make sure that we adequately resource the anti-slavery hotline and provide opportunities for people being held in conditions of modern slavery?
Yeah, so in addition to those coroner's recommendations that you've mentioned, the Anti-Slavery Commissioner has also put forward proposals for additional funding, as he does from time to time, for the anti-slavery hotline. And so I've heard those requests, and all of those requests will go into the normal budget bids for the upcoming budget.
We all know that budget bids need a champion. Will you be a champion for people trapped in modern slavery, Minister?
Sometimes when it comes to Treasury, you need more than a championship, but yes.
Right, thank you. Are you familiar with the coroner's recommendations from the inquest?
You need kryptonite sometimes.
Yes.
We try.
Are you familiar with the coroner's recommendations from the inquest into the deaths at Bondi Junction in April 2024?
Yes, I have read that, but
Yes.
I don't have a copy of it in front of me.
No. Recommendation 12 concerned changes to Jack's Law that be
One
made
sec,
permanent. Sorry?
No, it's an administrative responsibility.
Administrative.
Yeah, under the Premier's memorandum.
Okay, right. Yep. Sorry.
So, recommendation 12 concerned changes to Jack's Law, that it be made permanent and that it be allowed to apply to crowded places without the need for a declaration. What consideration has been given to making these changes?
Yeah, so thank you, Mr McKnight, for reminding me that there's a responsibility under a Premier's memorandum for government to respond to coroner's recommendations within 6 months, so that will be forthcoming.
I'm sure that the fact that there's a requirement they be responded to in 6 months doesn't mean that you have to wait for 5 months and 29 days to be able to reply.
This is 13th of April
And
24.
apparently there is a statutory review underway as well.
There is a statutory review of what?
There's a statutory review underway into Jack's Law at the moment. There's a paper released on the Have Your Say website for public consultation in relation to that. So that review is due to be tabled in the middle of this year.
But
And
I think
when does the
the
consultation
stat review is
close?
also it's public and it's live on DCJ's website.
It's
isn't
live
it?
on DCJ's website at the moment. The public consultation closes on the 27th of March.
27th of March, thank you.
And we've also undertaken targeted consultation
Yeah,
for
you go
key
now.
stakeholders.
Yeah. Attorney, just a quick question. How many reviews, inquiries, task forces commissioned by this government relating to justice remain without a formal government response?
I'll take that on notice.
Great, thank
Well, in
you.
relation to that,
Okay, you get one more question.
Okay.
Just 1 minute if you can.
Attorney General, the new National Legal Assistance Partnership is now in place. 9 million has been dispersed. Why did you decide to make community legal centres fight each other in a tender process for the remaining $3.5 million?
I didn't.
Well, then why are you using the tender process for the allocation of that $3.5 million?
So to characterise a tender as a fight is...
I
it's
think
a
that's
bit-
what everybody
bit- it's a bit
characterises
weird.
a tender as.
bit
Why
weird.
the tender process, Attorney?
Okay, so after the funds had been allocated under the the NJOP agreement, there was a figure of around
$3.5 million.
$18 million, I think,
3.5 million.
no, total over the five years.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah, so there was a pot of money left over. I think it was about $18 million over the 5 years for CLCs that I could allocate
Which
as
is
I saw
3.5
fit.
a year, yep.
Right, and so I've been talking to CLC New South Wales, the peak body, and CLCs as they walk through my door from time to time, and they explain to me things like that in Western Sydney, for example, the pot of money that they've been given under this government and the previous government hasn't changed for, I don't know, what are we up to now, 8 years, but the population's increased. They all tell me how staff costs have increased, rents increased, insurance, all the overheads are going up, right?
Yep.
Water, everything's going up.
Why
So-
the tender process,
so,
Attorney?
rather than me sitting down and asking DCJ what we should do with that money, I put a survey out to the CLCs and said, how would you like me to apportion this money to you? And based on their feedback, we then have put a tender process out to
So is
work
the
out
tender open?
where the need... Yeah, the tender's just about to go out, I think.
When?
And
18th of March.
18th of March.
And the terms of the tender, where are they available?
It'll be...
They're not available
When
yet.
will they
They'll
be
go
available?
out on the 18th of
18th
March.
of March.
Yeah.
Legal Aid New South Wales is managing the tender process.
I'll come back to Ms Hedder in the
Yeah, so this was a genuine effort to try and give that money to where it's most needed, according to the CLCs, not according to me or my office.